Slide visible to you? Yeah. Fine. So we are not going to see all the slides, but just 6-7 important slides from yesterday's discussion. I'm just going to flash. Quick 2 minutes. We are going to have brush up. So yesterday we defined power electronics in one line by telling that power electronics means using electronics to control power. And then we also told that just like mechatronics is a combination of two words, mechanical systems and electronics, power electronics is a combination of two words, power and electronics. And we raised a question that by power, what do we mean? By electronics, what do we mean? Because both the terms power and electronics are broad spectrum terms. So we have to define that which aspect of power and electronics has a connection with power electronics. Then we defined that electrical engineering is a combination of three fields: electronics engineering, power engineering, and control systems engineering. And we told that electronics engineering here means this, that is the different semiconductor devices. But we also made a point that although we may use BJTs, MOSFETs, and diodes in power electronics, but the main difference between these devices being used in this field and the field of conventional electronics is that there these devices have a maximum power dissipation rating in only milliwatts or maybe a few watts, but here the same devices are having a power dissipation rating greater than or equal to 2 watts. So here we have to use the word power BJT and power MOSFET. There we use the terms plain BJT and plain MOSFET. Okay, it's very clear that although it may appear that the same semiconductor devices are used in both conventional electronics and power electronics, the main difference is their power dissipation rating. And when we spoke about power, actually we means power engineering, and we told that power engineering has four aspects: generation of power, transmission of generated power, distribution of the power which has been transmitted, and ultimately utilization of power. We need to know that how much percentage power is utilized and how much it is wasted. We are referring to power factor here, reactive power and active power. And when we say control systems engineering, we told that it is dealing with the stability of systems using different criterion such as Bode plot, Nyquist plot, etc., etc. Okay. And then we told that power electronics has two functions: to process electrical energy and control electrical energy. And when we say about electrical energy, the power levels involved are in megawatts, that is 10 raised to plus 6 watts, and 10 raised to plus 9 watts or gigawatts. And we define that processing electrical power means changing the form or nature of electrical energy. That means if I transform or convert electrical energy from AC to DC or DC to AC, it is an example of processing electrical power. And we also told that electrical energy primarily exists in which form? In three-phase form. We told that this is what is generated in power stations irrespective of whether it is atomic, hydro or thermal. Three-phase power. And this is an example of processing electrical energy, converting AC to DC, and vice versa is also possible. And we told that controlling electrical power means changing the magnitude or changing the frequency or changing both. We gave two examples. First example, the peak to peak amplitude remains constant but the frequency changes. In second example, the frequency is remaining constant but the peak to peak amplitude is changing. A third example is also possible where we change both peak to peak amplitude and frequency. And then most importantly, we discussed about the block diagrams of an open loop PE system and closed loop PE system, where we used the brain muscle analogy, and we have related the function of the brain, the function of the muscles, and the coordination between them and their strengths and weaknesses to a power electronic system, where we told we have in total 5 compulsory building blocks, namely input electrical energy, load, the power circuit between the input and the load, the control circuit, and the isolation. And we pointed out and repeated again and again that the control circuit is responsible for switching on and off the power devices which constitute the power circuit. And because control circuit is usually a electrically weak component operating in milliwatts, while power devices which constitute the power circuit are accepting the high power electrical energy and driving the load, it is the high power side. Any open circuit or short circuit which may accidentally occur in the high power side, if it interferes with the low power side, it may damage the control circuit. So we also need an isolation between the low power side and high power side. And we also told that electrical energy, power circuit, load, control circuit and isolation, these have many more details with them. Electrical energy can be either pure AC, pure DC, or can be pulsating DC or switching DC. Load can be of 3 types: resistive load R, inductive load, that is R series L, or motor load, also called as high inductive load. Isolation can be either through using a pulse transformer or using optocoupler MCT2E. Control circuit can be of different types. It can be as simple as a single resistor called as resistive triggering, R series C, 555 timer, unijunction transistor UJT used as a relaxation oscillator, or even other customized ICs. Okay, we will see all these things today as the discussion progresses. Then we had discussed about the closed loop power electronic system, wherein electrical energy is inputted into power device. Power device is switched on and off using power circuit. Power device will transform, it will process or control electrical energy and drive the motor. Motor is the prime mover, it will drive the mechanical load. The output is sampled using a sampling circuit. The sampled output and the reference value are compared. The aim is to have a zero error. There is no difference between the sampled output and reference value. In case if the error is positive or negative, accordingly control circuit will increase or decrease the drive signal given to power device with an aim of making the error signal zero. This is a closed loop power electronic system. And then we ended the session yesterday by discussing about the different device families used in power circuits. The first family is power diodes. The second family is power transistors. Okay. And third family is thyristors. In power diodes, we have general purpose, fast recovery and Schottky. Only difference we told is that the reverse recovery time, which decides the turn off time of the device, goes on reducing as we proceed from general purpose to fast recovery and fast recovery to Schottky. So we can say the TRR is maximum for general purpose diodes and it is minimum for Schottky diodes. It is only a few nanoseconds. Then we told power transistors, we have 4 possible devices. We have power BJTs, we have power MOSFETs, we have insulated gate bipolar transistors, that is a combination of BJTs and MOSFETs, and last is static induction transistors. And we have given an example that we had to use the adjective power before diodes as well as the adjective power before transistors, because low power diodes and low power transistors do exist in the market. But when we say thyristors, thyristors automatically is synonymous to power device. So we don't need to use the terms powered thyristors is because there is nothing called as low power thyristors in market. Thyristors means high power devices, and SCR is the oldest and the most robust member of this family, A combination of two SCRs in back-to-back fashion forms a triac. Then we have static induction thyristor and we have gate turn-off thyristor. What is GTO will be discussed in the subsequent sessions. Okay, so understand one thing: power diodes is a family, power transistors is a family, and thyristors is a family. And we will see in the subsequent slides that what is the basis on which I can decide whether in a particular application I am supposed to use power BJTs or power MOSFETs or IGBTs. On what basis I should decide that no, I cannot use power transistors, but I have to use thyristors in my application. Very soon it will become clear the criterions based on which a power electronic circuit designer can make a choice between thyristors, members within the thyristor family, and a choice between the families of thyristors and power transistors. Okay, now we take our discussion ahead by continuing with the PPT we started discussing yesterday. Okay, so this is a snapshot from the first chapter of the book Power Electronics by Mohammad Rashid, one of the oldest and still one of the best books on power electronics. Just like we have Milman Halkias for electronic devices, or Boylshed Nasilsky, or we have RP Jain for digital electronics. Rashid is the first, oldest, and still the best book on power electronics. There are others who have entered into the field and they are good in different aspects. So we can clearly see here. Yesterday I had given an example that a power device has an ability to hold thousands of volts across itself in the off state. That is, it can block thousands of volts across itself in the off state, and when it starts conducting, it can conduct thousands of amperes. Just look into this thing. Lot of data is there, but you see here we have, just a minute. So you are able to see here we have the thyristor family here, and we can see here the rating of one of the thyristors. It is 6500 volts and 4200 amperes. So in the thyristor family, the maximum voltage that an SCR can block in the off state is 6500 volts, and the maximum current which it can carry in the on state is 4200 amperes. Similarly, if we see power transistors family, the largest rating which I am able to see here is Darlington, which can block 1200 volts in off state and conduct up to 400 amperes in the on state. If we go to power diodes, we can again see that the maximum voltage available with me is 6000 volts in off state and 1100 amperes in the on state. You see here, one more thing I would point is that if we see Schottky diodes are not having a voltage rating as high as the remaining ones, and also current rating is less. So one may say that, sir, how to make a choice? It's very simple. We can make a choice based on these parameters. We can see here the upper frequency. We can see upper frequency here of a Schottky diode is 30 kilohertz. And here the device which is having a voltage and current rating of 6 kilovolts and 1.1 kiloamperes, its maximum operating frequency is 20 kilohertz. So for example, if high frequency operation is my need, then I can use Schottky. So if my need is high frequency operation but low power operation, then I can choose Schottky. On the other hand, if my operating frequency is not that high but I need a high power application, then I can go for this particular high speed power diode. Similarly, we can see every power device here, it is having a voltage rating very high and a very high current carrying ability also. So there are different parameters. Basically, the two parameters upon which the choice is made is the maximum power dissipation and Fmax. Okay, there are some applications which need high power ability, but operating frequency need not be high. Some applications you don't need maximum power dissipation, but you need high frequency operation. So depending upon these two parameters, you can use this sheet and you can make a choice. One thing is very clear, that power devices have a tremendous ability to handle power. 6500 volts and 4020 amperes. Almost the participation is approximately equal to 24 megawatts. Okay. Yeah. So this is the same chart which I showed before this thing, but little bit in more details. Not this one, this one. Okay. So I need not explain this because this is more detail. Ultimately, we can see here that only one difference which we see between this chart and that chart is there we had only three families: power diodes, power transistors, and thyristors. Here we have a different semiconducting material. One is silicon as a semiconductor and silicon carbide as a semiconductor. So when I say silicon or only germanium, these are called as single semiconductors, while silicon carbide is actually SiC, a combination or an alloy of silicon and carbon, and this is called as compound semiconductors. So whenever you bring two different semiconducting materials together, the limitations of pure silicon or germanium are overcome. And there are many such pairs. We have germanium silicon as a compound semiconductor. We have gallium arsenide as another. We have silicon carbide. We have gallium nitride, and we have indium phosphide. Understand this thing, that gallium arsenide and indium phosphide are used in microwave circuits, because again we know that microwave spectrum, it starts at 0.3 gigahertz and it goes till 300 gigahertz. So silicon cannot operate at such high frequencies, but if we combine it with other semiconducting materials such as germanium, with arsenic, gallium, carbon, and nitride, then the operating frequency can be increased a lot. As far as gallium nitride is concerned, it is used for high power applications. Okay, so this is some details in addition to what I had shown before. This is an important chart. It is called as power ratings chart, and here clearly it is written that which device is good for what. So this is the voltage axis and this is the current axis, and I think so it is logarithmic. Okay, so we can see here that this is called as a safe operating area. What is safe operating area? We will discuss when the theory progresses. Safe operating area, it is basically a plot of Vmax versus Imax such that the Vi product is less than the PD max of device. It's a special kind of a chart which is actually referred by designers before they finalize the component. Okay, so this particular power ratings chart is also called as an SOAA plot, SOA, safe operating area plot. It will tell us that what is the value of voltage comma current at which I can operate my device such that it does not get damaged. And you know that if you want to ensure that a power device is not damaged, then power dissipation across the device should always be less than the maximum power dissipation rating given in the data sheet. So this is called as an SOA plot. And we can see here the different voltages and currents associated. So when we say power MOSFET here, you can operate the power MOSFET only in this region. Okay, so you can read this properly. Similarly, if you want IGBT, then IGBT can be operated here, just like that. Okay. This is also very important. As I told you here, we had made that the choice between the device is made based on what is the power dissipation requirement and the maximum operating frequency. This particular plot will help us do that. I want to make some important conclusions from here. So for example, if you want to check whether SCR is good for high frequency operation and high power operation also. Getting me now? So if you want to check that if I can use SCR for both high power application and high frequency application, the answer will come from here. We see here the SCR thing. So we see here that the x-axis indicates the maximum operating frequency, while the y-axis indicates the maximum power dissipation that can be handled by the device. So we see here SCR, maximum power which the SCR can handle is 10 raised to 7, that is it is 10 megawatt. At the same time, if I drop this down, I can see that the maximum frequency at which SCR can operate is only 1 kilohertz. So I can say the maximum power handling comma operating frequency of an SCR is 10 megawatt comma 1 kilohertz. On the other hand, if I see the MOSFET here, MOSFET goes till this frequency and it goes till this power. So I can say that MOSFET can dissipate a power somewhere between 1 kilowatt and 10 kilowatt. So say 5 kilowatt comma 500 kilohertz. So MOSFET is able to operate till 500 kilohertz, but it can handle only 5 kilowatt of power. SCR on the other hand can handle up to 10 megawatt and operate up to 1 kilowatt. So I can conclude that SCR is good for high power operation, but not for high frequency operation. Similarly, MOSFET, it is good for high frequency operation, but it is not good for high power operation. Let us see what is IGBT, bipolar, BJT. So we have discussed SCRs, power MOSFETs and power BJT. So power BJTs we can see here, the maximum power which a bipolar transistor can handle is again about between 1 kilowatt and 10 kilowatt. So I can say it can handle 5 kilowatt, and the frequency which it can handle is somewhere between 1 kilohertz and 10 kilohertz. So I can say about 8 kilohertz. Getting me? So bipolar junction transistor, power BJT is somebody who is in between the frequency ability of MOSFET and the power ability of SCR. So BJTs can be used for low power and low frequency operation. So MOSFET for high frequency low power operation, power BJT for moderately high frequency and moderately high power, and SCR is used for high power and low frequency operation. IGBT, if you see, IGBT again has its own limits year to year. Getting me na? As you see here, it's very clear that I said that IGBT IGBT is a combination of bipolar junction transistor and a MOSFET. We can clearly see that the operating square of IGBT falls between that of bipolar and MOSFET. Getting me na? So its operating frequency is larger than the maximum operating frequency of IGBT is larger than the max of BJT, but it is less than the max of MOSFET. Similarly, the power dissipation rating of the IGBT is much higher than that of BJT. Got the point? It's a good mix. So these kind of plots, that is power dissipation rating versus frequency, help us decide that which device is good for high frequency operation, comma low power, and all other possible combinations. Okay. Yeah. So again, control circuit performs the most important functions of firing, that is switching on, and commutating or switching off. So till now I was using the common terms which are used, that is switch on and switch off. But in the field of power electronics, the activity of switching on is technically called as firing. So I do not say switch on the SCR, I say fire the SCR, fire the power MOSFET, fire the IGBT, etc. Similarly, I do not say switch off the device, I say commutate the device. So say commutating the SCR, commutating the power MOSFET, commutating the power BJT, commutating the GTO. So firing and commutation are the two technical terms which are used for switching on the power device and switching off the power device. And the output of control circuit is actually realized using different types of control circuits. They are called as triggering circuits. So we have R triggering, which uses only R. We have RC triggering, which uses a combination of R and C. Then we have discrete device triggering, that is UJT, unijunction transistor. If you have studied UJT, it is actually a negative resistance device, and it is used as a relaxation oscillator in order to fire an SCR. Okay, and it is the best choice for firing an SCR. And the fourth category of triggering circuits is called as IC based circuits, and the most frequently used IC for firing and commutating a power device is a 555 timer. See, sir, how 555 timer? So 555 timer, at pin number 3 it will generate a digital waveform, a TTL waveform, shuffling between 0 volts and 5 volts, and using external components RA, RB and C, you can set the duty cycle of the output. Now 555 timer is the best choice for firing MOSFETs, because usually power MOSFETs have a threshold voltage of about 3.5 volts. So actually, when you perform experiment characteristics of power MOSFET in the lab, you realize that the gate threshold voltage VGT for a power MOSFET is as low as 3.5 volts. And because the output of a 555 timer goes till 5 volts, I can actually directly drive a power MOSFET from the output of a 555 timer. But as we say, our principle is using an isolation circuit between the control circuit low power side and the power circuit high power side. I always give the output of the 555 timer not directly to the gate of MOSFET, but through an isolation circuit such as pulse transformer or an optocoupler. Okay, so this is what I was talking about. The types of triggering circuits are discrete. We have R, RC and UJT, and they have their own limitations. If I use an R triggering, I can have firing angle varying only from 0 to 90 degrees. If I use RC triggering, I can have a firing angle greater than 90 but not equal to 180. But UJT is the best choice, because UJT can give me firing angles varying from 0 degrees or 0 radians till 180 degrees or pi radians. The second option is IC based. You can use 555 timer for power MOSFETs, or you can use customized ICs from Siemens Incorporation, that is TCS 785, technically called as phase control IC. It has the ability to fire two SCRs simultaneously with a phase difference of pi radians. So the first firing pulse will come at omega t equal to alpha degrees, and the second will come at omega t equal to pi plus alpha degrees. And also triggering is classified as DC triggering, AC triggering and pulse triggering. As and when our theory classes progress, we will also justify that what are the disadvantages of using DC triggering as well as AC triggering, and why pulse triggering is the choice in practical systems. So pulse triggering is preferred over DC and AC triggering because it has its own advantages. Right? So in our lab, we are going to use only 555 timer based triggering in the experiment called as chopper, and UJT triggering is actually used in 3.A, that is semi converter, 3.B, that is full converter, and also experiment number 7, that is AC voltage controller. So we are not, so we will demonstrate. So yes, one may say, sir, is DC triggering used? Yes, in experiment number 1, that is characters of SCR, we have used DC triggering. AC triggering you will not be able to see anywhere, but yes, pulse triggering is actually used in all the circuits here, and also we can demonstrate pulse triggering also in experiment number 1. Okay, so this was the classification about the different triggering methods. Never preferred, DCSE never preferred, and pulse is always preferred. Now we come to types of loads. What are the different type of loads which we can encounter? So as I told you, the first is R load, also called as purely resistive load. And somebody may say, sir, can you give a practical example of purely resistive load? Yes, we can give an example. And the example is this. Sorry. This is an example of a resistive load. That is the bulb. We also many times call it as a filament lamp or an incandescent lamp. So whenever you use a bulb, it is an example of a purely resistive load. And then we can also connect one resistor and one inductor in series. Usually this is the case in practical scenarios wherein the inductive side has some inductive effect. It is RL load. It is called as a small inductive load. And because of this thing, what happens is the IL nature will change. IL nature changes. And the third load, which is actually the load which is used in most of the industry setups, is called as highly inductive load. It is nothing but a motor load. So we know that motor is represented like this. Okay, these are the armature terminals A1 and A2, and an electrical equivalent of this is nothing but R, L and EB. So EB represents back EMF, L indicates the winding inductance, and this indicates the winding resistance. So winding resistance in series with winding inductance and with back EMF is actually nothing but RLEB load, or also called as inductive load or motor load. Getting me na? So whether it is converters or it is inverters or it is AC voltage controllers, we have to analyze the VL, IL for R load, RL load, and for RL and EB loads. Okay, so I have already written a comment here that lamp load or filament lamp with different wattage ratings in the example of a purely resistive load, and electrical motors, whether they are DC motors, AC motors, induction motors, synchronous motors, all of them fall in the category of highly inductive loads. Yeah, type of isolation circuits, as I told you, we have optocouplers, and there are two optocouplers which we know. One is MCT2E, which is a single optocoupler, and we have an LED inside which gives light lambda, and here we have a phototransistor with base facing it here. So this is nothing but MCT2E, and when you multiply this IC by 2, what we get is MCT6. It is a dual optocoupler. So are we using them? Yes. In the inverter circuit, in the PWM inverter kit, we have used MCT6, and in most of the kits in the lab we have used pulse transformers. So 4502 is 1:1. That means it is having one primary and it is having one secondary winding. And when we say 1:1:1, it indicates one primary winding and we have two secondary windings. That is why it is represented like this. And I think so there is a cross coupling between them like this, so that here if the firing pulse is coming at omega t equal to alpha, it will appear at alpha here, it will appear pi plus alpha here. So there is 180 degrees phase shift which is brought about using secondary winding connections. Okay, so we have either IC based optocouplers for isolation, we have pulse transformers, and both of them are good, right? They are no problem. Getting me? Only difference is pulse transformer is ultimately a transformer. It is heavy, bulky, it is having some losses. So I can say optocouplers are compact, fast, and also low power. Almost they are lossless. This is the advantages of using optocouplers. Yeah, now we come to the most interesting part. seeing power electronics in action here. So yes, computers, they use power electronic systems. Where do they use? Let us see. Yes. So this is an SMPS. We have an SMPS unit here, and SMPS is a multi-output power supply. At least I know there are 5 outputs. It gives plus 12, minus 12, plus 5, minus 5, and plus 3.3. So it is basically multi-output power supply with excellent load plus line regulations. And what we are seeing in front of us is the printed circuit board for SMPS. And if you just zoom this photo, these are nothing but power devices, and these are actually power MOSFETs, and they are having the part number IRF 840, which is an N channel EMOS enhancement MOSFETs, and the rating is 500 volts and 8 amperes. There's one more device which is available in market, IRF 540, whose rating is 100 volts, 27 amperes. So for high current applications, one can choose 540. P250N. Mostly it is having, yeah, it is having a rating of 200 volts and 30 amperes. So we can say its rating is 6 kilowatt. This rating is 4 kilowatt. This rating is 2.7 kilowatt. That is a product of voltage and current. So yes, in SMPS we are using power MOSFETs here, and there will be mostly this is the Farad core transformer which is talked about. These are power capacitors, and many more components are there here. Okay, let's go back and see some more automobiles. Yes, so this is a normal panel in a Maruti car. So these are nothing but switches which are used for lowering and raising the windows. So they are power windows, right? So in automobiles, power steering, power windows, all use some kind of PE system. Okay. Telecommunications, ultra reliable backup power supplies, because you know that telecommunications is a very critical field. People are really mad behind smartphones, and they just cannot tolerate any signal drop or call drop. So telecommunication systems have to be up, ideally 24 by 365 into infinite number of years. So all this telecommunication, stations, base stations, transmission stations, towers, all of them, they cannot be constantly connected to AC always. When there is a mains failure, then the show must go on. That is why they need ultra reliable backup power supplies. And in a backup power supply, there is no option other than using a power electronic system. We have lightings in which we have CFLs, compact fluorescent lamp. One of the student, I do not remember, yesterday I told him that whenever one of our CFLs or LEDs in our homes uh, gets damaged, just break it and see what kind of circuit you are having inside. We have electronic ballast. Somebody was asking me, sir, how does it contain power electronics? We can see here there is an EMI filter, that is electromagnetic interference filter. There's a rectifier. There is a PFC. PFC stands for power factor correction. There is a half bridge resonant output. So we have a resonant converter being used in an electronic ballast, and we have this here. I also want to show you something here. I have opened one notes of mine. We see here. This is the mains. This is a fluorescent lamp, there is a tube, and there's a ballast in between. This is a basic diagram. That is the main supply, the ballast and the fluorescent lamp are in series. But when you replace the conventional ballast with a power electronic system, this is what it looks like. So we have the AC mains given to power factor correction circuit. It will try to bring the power factor close to unity, so there is no reactive power. We have an EMI filter here. There is an uncontrolled rectifier. Uncontrolled rectifier is nothing but a diode based rectifier whose output is given to a high frequency inverter. So uncontrolled rectifier will convert AC into DC. The DC output of the rectifier is given as an input to inverter. Inverter will convert that DC into high frequency AC. So ultimately the lamp, here the lamp is driven by a 50 Hertz supply, but here the same lamp is now driven by a high frequency supply. There are its own advantages for this. You will study this in the 6th unit. So yes, electronic ballast contains a combination of uncontrolled rectifier and an inverter, which is also a power electronic system. Here it's very clear that we have solar panels here and we have wind turbines, and to convert solar panels DC output into a 230 volt AC, naturally we have to use an inverter. So the classic application of an inverter in real world is to convert solar energy into an AC supply which can drive homes. Similarly, wind turbine also, the electrical energy which comes out is random in nature and you have to convert it into an AC. So yes, conventional sources of energy need power electronic systems. Then we have micro turbines. So this is a gas turbine. It's a 400 megawatt gas turbine used in power stations. It is now replaced in a miniature form using what is called as micro turbines. So it's called as micro gas turbines have replaced the gigantic gas turbines. Electric locomotive, yes, the suburban trains which run in Mumbai and in Kolkata, they are using a combination of PE systems. We see here, we have an auxiliary rectifier. The rectifier is one PE system here. Inverter is another PE system here. And yeah, that's it, right? So we have compressors. So there are blowers. So there's a battery here. DC, and rectifier will convert AC into DC. Inverter will in turn convert DC into AC. So yes, rectifiers and inverters are a combination which is used. It's the main inverter here. Okay, so we are seeing that rectifier and inverter, it forms the heart of electric locomotives. Electric car, yes. So now a lot of talk is going out about industrial revolution 4.0, and there's a lot of pollution, and to reduce the pollution they are thinking of electric cars. It will take few years for electric cars to get commercialized because there are some hiccups and some obstacles in India at least. We see here inverter, a PE system, boost converter, another PE system, inverter again. So again we see that a combination of converter. So when I say converter, I mean controlled rectifier. That is, it is a rectifier which uses SCRs, and we have an inverter here. So converter and inverter combined together forms the heart of an electric car. Getting me? Yeah. So leading power manufacturers, if you want to know more about which vendors manufacture power devices, we have International Rectifiers. The website is irf.com. Hope it has not changed. I have not browsed it since a long time. So we have International Rectifiers, and you see here I had mentioned devices IRF 540, IRF 840, So here IR stands for international rectifiers. So IRF 540 and 840 are power MOSFETs manufactured by international rectifiers. We have ST Microelectronics, we have Motorola, we have Texas and Vishay. But I feel this and this are like the pioneers. Motorola, Texas, they might be manufacturing components, but the quantity is very low. They are specialized in their own products. Vishay, the semiconductors, I think so, it is in Pune also. So we can see Vishay buses plying on different roads in Pune. So I think so. Vishay Semiconductors have their manufacturing unit in Loni Karbor. Before some years, we had taken students for an industrial visit, but we found that they are not manufacturing power transistors there. What they are manufacturing is only R, L, and C's. Okay. Yeah. So these are some snapshots of devices. So this is most probably a power BJT. So it doesn't look like the weakling BC547. So we know that so PC547 tip 122, these are all low power BJTs, but this is a power BJT. Okay, so these are some IGBT modules. Okay, I think so. One of the part numbers IRG something I don't know. It's from international rectifier. So this is most probably a power MOSFET. So they look robust because they are robust. Okay, yeah. So this is a Schottky power diode. These are power diodes, right? So they do not look like those skinny ones. We have this 1N4007, one silver band is there, anode is there, cathode is there. So these are called as stubs actually. So you can see here. So these are power diodes and they look markedly different than our conventional line frequency diodes 1N4007, which we use in the labs for rectification. Yeah. So list of experiments I need not discuss because I'm going to discuss it anyways during the practical sessions. Yeah. So I'm not advertising, but usually I put videos on the YouTube channel so that because of any problems in the connectivity, if some student misses it, then he can. So on the YouTube channel, what I'm going to put, I'm going to upload all of my theory sessions on this channel, and also practicals I'm not going to put, only one video which I recorded today while I was taking practicals for the batch KLL8. I found it to be very concise and refined, so I have recorded it, I have compressed it, but then it is going to be published on the channel only on Sunday 6 p.m. because I want students to attend the session, that's why. Okay, yeah. So thank you for the patient hearing. This is all from my side as regards introduction to the subject of power electronics, and today's session was part 2 session which will eventually go on the channel. Any questions or comments, you are free to ask. I'm allowing the students to unmute. If anybody has any question to ask, they can ask. Any questions or comments?